And we can move on to the next presentation, which is by Igor Pilshchikov, Jakobsonian broad metrics, a model for musical verse exemplified by two late Soviet Russophone bard songs.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Right, so I've got six musical samples to listen and analyze, 1 minute each, so maybe my oral presentation takes some 23 minutes. So in his paper, Meter and Performance, Paul Kiparsky emphasized the significance of Roman Jakobson's elaboration on the Russian formalist dichotomy of meter and rhythm for the analysis of performed poetry. In linguistics and poetics, Jakobson renamed this dichotomy a dichotomy of verse design and verse instance, and Kiparsky reminds us added a concept of delivery instance, text setting, recitation, thus making a step from narrow metrics to broad metrics. Acceptable deliveries are preordained by verse instances but do not coincide with them. To be sure, Jakobson complemented this triad with yet another element, delivery design, performance conventions that govern the delivery and determine the reciter to, I quote, cling to a scanning style or tend toward prose-like prosody or freely oscillate between these two poles, end of quote. Therefore, delivery instance is influenced by verse instance on the one hand and by delivery design on the other. Jakobson was thinking about recitation of written poetry rather than singing songs. However, this model can be adapted to the description of sung poetry. In this case, delivery design can be defined as the musical rhythm of the poetical line, as it is determined by the musical phrase on which it is sung. The patterns of verse design and verse delivery may not coincide. When they diverge, the performer will be tempted to structure a delivery instance in conformity with either of the two structures, or, to use Jakobson's words, to freely oscillate between these two poles. In my paper, two late Soviet songs will be used to illustrate this problem. They both belong to the genre known as bard songs, the Bardovskaya Pesnya, also known as Avtorskaya Pesnya, author's song, because it was mostly performed by the songwriters themselves, accompanied by guitar rather than written for other singers. The most well-known names among the Russophone bards are those of the dissident stars Alexander Gavich, Vladimir Vysotsky, and Vlada Ujava, who became famous in the 1960s. And their fame was preceded by the first specimens of the genre songs written in the 1930s by poets like Pavel Kogan, Mikhail Ancharov, and Mikhail Lvovsky. My first example is the song "На Тихорецкую состав отправится", Lvovsky's lyrics of 1939, set to music by Mikhail Tariverdiev in 1962. It is a song about a girl going on a train who just split up with somebody but does not lose heart. Tikhoretskaya is the name of the train station. And this song gained enormous popularity after Eldar Rязan's 1975 film, The Iron of Fate on Julia Both, that became the main New Year's Eve classic. The main female character who sings this song was performed by Polish actress Barbara Brycka, and vocals voiced by Alla Pugacheva, Russia's most famous pop star in the 1970s and the 80s. So this is a scene from the film. Let me try to visit. I will use the Russian subtitles because we are more interested in rhythm now, not in the meaning.
На Тихорецкую состав отправится, покончит троица перо, останется. Стена кирпичная, часы вокзальные, платочки бедные, платочки бедные, платочки бедные, платочки бедные, печальные. Начнет выпытывать купе курящий про мою прошлое и настоящее. Давай стрекоза Пусть удивляется, с кем распрощалась я, с кем распрощалась я, с кем распрощалась я, с кем распрощалась я, вас не касается.
Right. How can I switch to the next one? Yeah. This song is interesting to us because it features different positions of the caesura in verse design and delivery design. For the sake of simplicity, I ignore the line between the third and the last line of each stanza because it always repeats the first hemistick of the last line, so I consider these stanzas as quatrains. The poem's meter belongs to the group of syllabic accentual hyperchainic meters, namely it is hexon the fourth, that is a meter constituted by a six-syllabic foot with a compulsory stress on the fourth foot and a compulsory word boundary between the feet. If we distinguish between tendencies, dominants, and constants using the statistical trichotomy developed by Jakobsonian and Kirill Turanovsky and applied to the analysis of chaotic meters by Mikhail Lotman, we can distinguish between three types of syllables: weak, strong, and compulsory stressed syllables. On the screen, you can see the statistic of the stresses and on the even numbered syllables. And the first version is the expansion of the hexonic interpretation. На Тихорецкую состав отправится, вагончик тронется, перрон останется. However, the regularity of the word boundaries in the first stanza creates an inertia of iambic pentameter with the caesura after the fourth foot and adjective clause. And the expansion is на Тихорецкую состав отправится, вагончик тронется, перрон останется. And this leads to interesting consequences. This hypertonic is a poetic rhythm which is set to music only in the third line, whereas the second expansion is set to music in song lines 1, 2, and 4 of each stanza. In the numerical symbols below, 0 denotes an upbeat, 1 a downbeat, and 2 a downbeat, followed by a longer tone. This is a rhythm structure of the verse. Consequently, in all lines but line 3, the performer may accept linguistically impossible intraverbal injunctions, such as про мое прошлое и настоящее, pronounced with a longer a. And this is how Pugacheva sings it. However, in the last line of the same quatrain, which is rhythmically identical, she easily makes a pause in the same position after the monosyllabic personal pronoun вас, meaning you. С кем распрощалась я, вас не касается. Now let me show again the same difference between this настоящее не касается. This is how she actually recorded it behind the scene.
Отправиться, вагончик тронется вперед, останется стена кирпичных, часы назад, лампочки белые, лампочки белые, лампочки белые, глаза печальные. Лампочка дрейфует, не грустно, и только ручка в руке, так грустно, только с девчонкой, такой останется.
The next portion, a pause after the monosyllabic conjunction и, meaning and, would sound unnatural, so про мое прошлое и настоящее. But this is, however, where Vladimir Vysotsky placed the stress in this line. In the 1960s, Vysotsky, poet and songwriter, a leading actor of the neo-avant-garde Taganka theater, and possibly the most well-known personality in the late Soviet era, begins his at-home performance of this song with the words, "It's not my song, but a really good one," and I just wanted to pay attention to this in настоящее. so I have to go on. My second example is more complicated than the first one. It's Vlada Kojava's Peshenka o Durakах, Little Song About Fools, a sardonic song about flocks of fools led by a foolish flock leader, very popular these days again. There was a version on Facebook with this song. The Kojava, a Moscow-born ethnic Georgian, is perhaps the most canonized poet among Russian Russophone bards. He's the only bard awarded a personal volume in the prestigious Biblioteka Poeta book series, and he was the only Soviet author whose poem Vladimir Nabokov ever translated into English. In his recent article on the Little Song, Alexander Zhalkovsky noticed that it has a very complicated textual pattern set to a more simple musical pattern. And now let's listen to the author's concert performance from the 1980s. And then I'll comment on the correspondence between the rhythm of verse and the rhythm of That's the phrase that he did not finish. Now, the table shows the distribution of stresses in syllabic lengths. Potential ictuses are underlined, potential anacruses and clausula of both hemistichs are bracketed in parentheses. So, the poem consists of 6 quatrains, and its text is realized in a song consisting of 2 main quatrains and a chorus, the whole construction repeated twice. The musical design, deep structure, can be generalized as shown on the screen, so it's quite simple in comparison with the actual meter of the poem. And the rules to generate certain structures are pretty usual, you can see. So potential ictuses of the verse text can coincide either with the downbeat or with the third beat or the 4 beats in the bar, or with the quarter note surrounded by the eighths in case of syncopation. Here in the second quatrain, syncopation and a unique consequence of 3 quarters, one after another, to set to music a hemistick with a 0 syllabic interval can be seen. Whereas the main quatrains are in D major, the chorus is performed on different melody and in the relative H minor key, but the meter and rhythmical patterns do not change. So 2 metrical interpretations of the verse text are possible. The first is that it is a loose segmented 3+3 ictic dominant with variable clausulas and anacruses in both hemistichs, and with the possibility of replacing one 3 ictic hemistick by a 2 ictic hemistick. In a musical bar, the potential ictus can coincide either with the downbeat or with the third beat. And dominant has that related is the meter where you can have 1 or 2 weak syllables between the ictuses. The other interpretation is that it is 2+2 ictic tactally with 1 or 2 or 3 weak syllables between the ictuses, and in this case the potential ictuses would coincide only with the downbeats. Perhaps both interpretations can be reconciled if we use 3 types of syllabic notation, but I have to elaborate on this more. And now I'll present the most obvious cases of the delivery design's influence on performance. The very first word, Chekhov's name Anton, I'm sure that you recognized this beginning of the phrase, is either trans-accentuated or atoned. Anton Pavlovich Chekhov, однажды заметил. It began with an alt-tact. Line 1 can also be sung without trans-accentuation. It's Anton Pavlovich Chekhov, однажды заметил, and this is what we can actually hear soon in one more performance of this song. And a symptomatic Fact. Line 3 makes a perfect verse line if the caesura cuts a strong syntactic link. Скольких дураков своей жизни я встретил. But the author, supporting the tendency toward the 5 plus 5 as a syllogism, prefers atonement. Скольких дураков в своей жизни я встретил. And later he even changed the wording in order to avoid trans-accentuation. Скольких дураков в этой жизни я встретил. Stanza 2, in the first line, the noun дураки, fools, can be either trans-accentuated or atoned to avoid a dissyllabic anachronism supported by the musical rhythm. The author prefers trans-accentuation. Дураки обожают. In the fourth line, the same noun occurs, and this time the author prefers atonement, thus producing a linguistically impossible entrinomy. А дураков нету, улетели все. And in the second hemistick of the first line, the verb собираться is double accentuated. Дураки обожают собираться в стае. Собираться, two stresses. A superfluous stress is added on the first syllable of the hemistick, and similarly the conjunction что is stressed in the same position in line 3, although it's normally atoned. And here several stresses are added on the conjunctions a, I, and да, all meaning and or. But in the lines quoted on the screen. А дураков нету. И вот так просто, которую не придумать и не описать. Дальше его нет. We don't say this in normal Russian speech. And this is why the da is performed differently in the last line of the fifth stanza, where it falls on the дальше его взять, and in the next two lines, where it falls on the anachronism. Да очень не хочется, да кончится бытие. No stress. So now I suggest that we listen to this song again with Russian subtitles, and I can prove that my analysis is correct. So, this is the song performed at Akujava's home, now the Akujava Memorial Museum in Peredelkino, near Moscow. To the conclusion. This song was written in 1982 for a less known film in which it was sung by Leonid Filatov, another Taganka actor. We don't have time to listen to it, but there are no accentuation abnormalities in Filatov's performance. That's it. And therefore, in Akudjava's performance, the delivery design in Jakobson's sense, the performance ustanovka, is scanning the musical rhythm to the extent that words can be double accentuated, atoned, or trans-accentuated. And perhaps a revised Jakobsonian scheme should look different than what I proposed at the beginning. And this is a more sophisticated scheme. Delivery instance song rhythm as governed by two different metrical schemes. So that's what I wanted to say today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And do we have any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just want to have a quick, general question about using the delivery instance, so the structure of the music for describing some of the verse, like especially from historical verse, like in 1917, when we know that there wasn't a melody. However, like on the metrical level, the verse would look like its description would look indistinguishable from the general, like iambic tetrahedron, for example. But if we know the melody, do you think it's possible to also use like melodical features to describe kind of the rhythmical structure of the poem in a kind of more specialized way?
So, can you reformulate the question? What is the point? My point was that we've got two metrical structures, basically.
Yes.
One embedded in music and another in verse. And in cases like this, one of them can overweight.
Yes.
This was one idea. Another idea, which was implied there, that there may be a text whose rhythm is governed by more than one metrical structure. And maybe it's not only sonnet poetry, but some non-classical meters as well, as I also tried to demonstrate. And if we analyze contemporary music, we have not only the score and the published text, but also recordings where we can see how the author interpreted this metrical design, and possibly variations, especially when we sing songs sung by other contemporaries. But if we analyze, for example, 18th and 19th century songs, I'm not sure that we can get the similar results, but we can do something. But we have to find a way to transcribe this melody. So what I had to do when I did that, I actually used the musical score, but I also had to listen to each stance and performance, because, as I mentioned, there are variations in the melody. So each 2/8 can be replaced by a 2/8, for example, or 2/8 can be replaced by 1/4 and vice versa. And as a result, from the pure musical score, you can guess what the performance might be, but not always. Was it the answer? Or?
Yeah, it was the answer. It's generally, basically, well, I was asking about bracketing the performance, right, the specific performance, and using the meter of the melody kind of to also additionally describe the meter of the poem, kind of in a regular way.
Well, I think it's still possible, especially if the meter is more regular, especially if we deal with classical meters, when we can expect a particular distribution of stresses and syllabic lengths. But it becomes really more complicated with non-classical meters, as in Akudjava's method, for example, because when you just read this text without listening to it, you are completely lost. I mean, I asked several versters to define the meter, and it's not an easy thing to do, and there are various versions, various possibilities to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one raised hand online. So, Yelena, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for your very inspiring talk. I was always wondering whether there are many instances where the music takes priority over the metrical, over the rhythm of the poem, and how you would describe these cases. What does it tell you? Thank you.
Thank you. That was exactly the question that I wanted to find an answer. And what I found is that if the author performs the song, there is a tendency that the author emphasizes the musical part of the text and does not follow the text itself. So something like authorial reading in poetry. Whereas actors sing it in a different way and try not to follow the melody, although they're singers, but follow the text and its syntactic links, and they are similar to they're similar to what is actors' recital of the poems. But what is even more interesting, we can say that actors do not know anything about poetry, and that's why they perform in a prose-like style. But in my examples, not only Vysotsky is also a poet and a singer, but he performs the other authors' poem differently, following the text and not the musical meter. But even in the example that I skipped Pilatov's interpretation of a Kujava with no transitory accentuations or double accentuations, whereas in Kujava's own performance there are about 10 of them, we cannot say that Pilatov was just an actor because he also composed poetry and can be also considered one of those bard-like poets, singers. So we've got a similar dichotomy of authors reading and actors reading, but actors who are poets tend to perform their poetry disregarding the text, and those who perform others' poetry tend to violate the musical rhythm in order to express the message. But maybe it's just the examples that I gathered, because I tried to find at least 2 different performances of each song by 2 contemporaries.
Very interesting, thank you.
Very interesting, thank you.
Yeah, we have one more question.
Thank you. Just a remark, maybe. In the 16th century Hungarian poetry, we have something similar. So it's mostly an epic poetry, a song poetry, and there are lots of poems concerned without melody, but with the indication of a tune. That the tune is given in a manuscript, saying that you can sing this song on this melody. And sometimes there are up to 5 or 6 melodies given. You can sing it to this song, or to that one, or that one, or that one. And depends on you, on your musical knowledge. So in that case, it's really funny that you have the same metrical pattern most of the case, with some slight differences, but the melody might be chosen rather freely. And of course, the interpretation might be even much freer in a way. So just, I know it's a very far away analogy, but that's something that proves that, yeah, there's an interdependence, but still an independence of the text from
It's not so far away for 2 reasons. First of all, even in the 19th and 20th century, there are songs written on the melody of, and especially when we open the 19th century book, we've got some meter, but it says on the melody of, and we have to guess which melody it is because it can be lost. And when we find it, there are different versions. But even in the 20th century, there can be different melodies, and one and the same poem can be set to different musical pieces. In particular, the first song I presented here actually had 3 different melodies, and Verdi's is only the most popular one. So we've got exactly the same situation, and we don't have complete transcriptions of all melodies. One of them is lost, although in the theaters in the 60s, both of them were performed. And now the situation is not much different from the 90s of the 16th century. We are losing information.
Okay, thank you very much.